Okay, so you're going to use your newfound hand sewing skills to decorate a pumpkin. So you've got a choice of the green or the orange. First thing you want to do is you'll take a piece of chalk, or you could take a pencil and just lightly draw out your design. So on this particular one, I drew out just a regular jack-o'-lantern face. I have another one where I just did like the little lines that the pumpkins have. And I did the stem and so forth. So that's the first thing you're going to want to do is draw out your design. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be a jack-o'-lantern. It can be, you know, your initials. It could be a peace sign. You could put a heart or anything. But you're going to be using your sewing skills to outline whatever you draw on your pumpkin. To create your designs, you're going to be using embroidery floss or embroidery thread. So the kind I have in the classroom today for you to use looks like this. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a piece of it, you know, from the end, and you're going to, just like you do regular thread, oops, I've tangled this completely up, is you're going to measure from nose to end of fingertips, just like we do when we're doing hand sewing. Okay, so you're going to have about 24 inches. Okay, and you're going to go ahead and cut off. Okay, so embroidery floss is a little bit different than using regular thread. Okay, so here we have 6 strands of thread basically. So what you want to do, if you want to use, you know, 2 strands of it, you would want to pull them out from here. Okay, so for example, here I'll show you how they are. You can kind of see when you spread them apart how, you know, there's 6 different ones there. Okay, now the tricky part is not getting these tangled up when you take them out. So I'm going to take them out one at a time. Okay, I'm going to use 2 of these threads. Okay, so I'm going to take them out one at a time. So you're going to pull, and as you pull, you're just going to scooch down the rest of the thread. Okay, until you have that one free. Okay, so there's that one free. All right, and you're going to unsmush that, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then you're going to do, if you want a second one, you're going to do the same thing. So kind of get into focus here. I'm going to take just one of those threads and same thing. Okay. All right, I'm trying to do this on camera is not easy. Okay, all right, so there's one piece there. Okay, and again, I'm just pulling as I am kind of sliding the rest of the thread down. You can kind of see that. Okay, if you try to pull out more than one at a time, you're going to get a big problem with the rest of the thread, because this is still usable. Okay, you might end up using this when you run out of thread on your needle. Okay, so don't just toss that away or whatever, because you can still use this. Okay, and you probably will need to. Okay, so that's how you get your thread out. Now, when you use embroidery floss, you do need a slightly different needle. So there are some needles available to you to use. You can kind of see, I'm trying to show this and get this in focus, but the eyes of the needle are a little bit bigger. Okay. So you should have a needle that has the eyes are a little bit bigger. The rest of the needle is going to be a little bit thicker. Okay, the reason this is bigger is because you're going to be threading basically 2 pieces of thread into that eye of the needle. Okay, so what I did is I went ahead and put my pieces of thread together. I've got 2 tails here. Okay, and then I've got, of course, 2 tails at the other end. Okay, so we have a total of 4 tails, but you need 2 of the tails, and we're going to thread both these, and I do it at the same time. You're going to thread both these into the eye of the needle. Okay, so this is going to be a little challenging for me with the camera. There we go. So I got them both in. I did kind of lick the tips of that floss first to get them in there. That does help me. Okay, so I did put that in there. They're both in that eye of the needle. Now I'm going to pull them, and it's just like you do with regular hand sewing in this case, though. There are a lot of other ways to be doing what I'm doing, but this is how I want you to do it today. Okay, so you're going to put your 4 tails together. Okay, so basically you're doing the same thing you would do as if you're threading a needle with regular thread, except you're doing it with 2 strands of thread. Okay, so I'm going to take my 4 tails. Okay, I'm going to kind of smooth this out and go ahead and make a regular knot. Now you shouldn't have to make a really super thick knot on this because it's a lot of threads. Okay, and even though these are felt, it will probably still knot just fine. Okay, all right, so there's my knot. Okay. Now the reason we're using embroidery floss on this and not regular thread is it will look better on this felt. In fact, next week when you make your felt stuffed animals, you have an option. You can use this kind of thread if you want. It looks better, it's thicker, it shows up better, and so forth. So what you need to do when you start embroidering your project, decide what stitch you want to use. So far we have learned the running stitch, the back stitch, and the whip stitch. Now if you wanted to use, for example, the whip stitch and just kind of go all the way around the outside of him, you could do that. So that might look kind of fun. You could use the running stitch to outline, you know, in my case, the mouth. You could also use the back stitch for that as well. I will say the back stitch looks really cool when you like you drew your name on this and you wanted to outline it with the embroidery. Back stitch looks really good for that. Okay, so again, you will have wanted to go ahead and draw your design on this. I'm going to actually start, I'm going to do the running stitch on his, I'm going to start on the eye here. Okay, so it's just like, you know, we did with the other projects we've done so far. You're just going to come up, and I'm doing the running stitch, so I'm going to follow my line. Now this particular, if you use the wax chalk, this irons off. So after you're done, you can have somebody who's been trained on the irons just iron that off, and you won't have any of that white chalk left. Okay, so I'm going to want to outline this, and I could be using the back stitch for this as well. Okay, the only stitch you wouldn't be able to use for this would be, you know, the whip stitch wouldn't be good for this. Okay, so again, I'm doing this on camera. It's a little further apart than I actually wanted it. Okay, now if you do mess up, you can cut your knot. You can also use your seam ripper to rip it out. Okay, any level 2 would know how to use a seam ripper. Miss G would know how to use a seam ripper if she's in there. Okay, I'm just going to keep going around doing his eye. All right, so I did the first eye, and I went to the second eye. I did go ahead and knot off on the first eye before I went to the second eye. If it had been a little closer, I would have just, you know, gone across with my thread. But I did want to show you how to knot off on this kind of project. Okay, so there's the little pumpkin eye. I'm on the back. Okay, and hopefully, now some of these stitches you can't really see on the back. They're really small. But what I'm going to do is, to make my knot, I'm actually going to go behind one of these stitches. Okay, instead of going like through the fabric like we usually do, I'm going to go behind one of these stitches. I'm going to go ahead and pull it all the way through. And then I'm going to go behind it one more time. Okay. Behind it one more time. And then I'm going to go ahead and go through my loop like we normally do. Okay, in this case, nobody's going to be wearing this or anything like that. I'm just going to knot once. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. Okay. So I do need to go back and, you know, finish his eye. I ran out of floss. So if you've got, you know, less embroidery floss than this, it's going to be really hard to knot off. Okay, it's the same with the thread. You've got to have enough length on your thread to be able to still knot off. All right, so I am going to show you actually a new it's kind of a stitch, but it's a technique you can use on this project as well as a project we're going to do next week. And it's called the satin stitch. So I'm going to show you how to do that on the nose here. Okay, and usually something smaller would be a good idea. So if you were making next week, decide to make a cat stuffed animal, like the noses would, if this next technique would work for the noses. Okay, so I did put new embroidery floss on my needle. I just pulled out 2 more threads out of this little section I have. So I've done that twice now. So the next time I need embroidery floss, I have the 2 there I need, and I don't have to pull any of it out. So that's kind of nice. So save that. All right, so this is going to be the satin stitch. Basically, it's a filler stitch, so you can fill in areas. Now, you don't ever want to fill in big areas, like you'd have to pick a section to do and then so forth, because it doesn't work quite as well. But this nose is kind of a small area, and so it works pretty well for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the wider end of this. You could start the narrow end, you know, it's fine. But I'm just going to go ahead and start at the wider end. So I'm going to put my needle in at that part of the triangle. Oops. There it is. Okay. I've got my knot. There it is, touching the back. Okay. Now instead of making little stitches, what I'm going to do is put my needle at the other end, right on that outline. Okay, and stick it into that corner of that triangle. Whoops. And I did something. Okay, just got hooked there. Okay, and now I've got a nice line right there. Okay, now you don't want to use that for an outline stitch. This is not what this is. This is a satin stitch. So now I'm going to go back to where I started over here. And let me see. Okay, I'm going to come up kind of right beside where I went previously. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. And then I'm going to come over here, put my needle down right beside there. Okay, and bring that down as well. Okay, you see I've got like a little, I call those bubbles, even though it's not a bubble. All you have to do is kind of try to find the thread that's causing that issue and try to pull it and see. Whoops, nope. Okay, so I'm going to take each individual thread and kind of give it a little tug and see if one of those will fix that bubble. Okay. Okay, hopefully that worked. Nope, it did not. Well, you know what that is? That's actually the part of the tail from my knot. Okay. So I could actually cut that off later, so that's what I'll do. Okay. Sometimes that happens. The little tail from your knot will come up. Okay, so to continue this, you just go back to the beginning again. Okay, so you can kind of see. Okay, and up a little bit. So you're just putting each stitch, and then you're always going to go back to where your marking is. Okay, so there's that again. Now I've got a little bit of a space there, so what I can do is if I want to fill that in, I can choose to go back and go between those two areas. Okay, and then just fill that in. Okay, now if this is somewhat confusing to you, I have another video that's probably better than this one on how to do this satin stitch, but basically all you're doing is just kind of making large stitches and filling in an area. Okay, and you always go back to the same side where you started. Okay, so I'm going back to the same side I started on to continue this. Okay. And there you go. So if I keep going, it'll eventually get narrower and narrower. All right, so there I have my little nose, and it's called a satin stitch because it's kind of satiny when you rub your fingers on it. So I've not knotted off yet because I wanted to show you this as well. Okay, so you have all these threads here, and all I'm going to do for this, and this is a traditional embroidery thing. Okay, you wouldn't do this on clothing, but if you're doing it on embroidery, you can do it this way. Just take your needle and run it underneath those stitches, just like that. Okay, so I just took the needle, I'm at the top of my nose, and I'm just going to run it underneath my stitches. I'm not going on the right side. I'm just running it underneath my stitches, just like that. Okay, and that's pretty much all you have to really do on this kind of stitch, and just kind of cut close. Okay, so that wasn't really a knot, I just ran it under my stitches. Okay, and so there's my nose. Okay, so all I have left is to do is my mouth. But I mean, you can do any kind of design. So you're thinking, oh, this would be cute if you had like a little spider up here or something. Or you can make this a fall pumpkin and just, maybe embroider some leaves or something. So take your time with this and just practice your stitches. Okay, again, you can use a whip stitch to go around the pumpkin all the way if you want. You could use on the one I have as a sample in the classroom, I use the satin stitch kind of up here in a unique way where it kind of chevrons out, and then I did some funky things there. If you're able to get some ribbon and you want to, put a bow on it or something, a pumpkin with a bow, you can certainly do that as well. Okay, so have fun with this, be creative, and enjoy.